After 21 of what I can only describe as the best racing I've ever seen in my lifetime, it's finally time for the 2021 Formula One season to come to its end this weekend in Abu Dhabi. But we have been so lucky this season to have one of the best seasons in Formula One history and to go into the final round with all to play for and with actually the two title protagonists tied on points. It's everything we can hope for and even more. But after a crazy season full of new tracks, crazy weather, and what seems like the Drivers' Championship changing hands every single race, we still have one surprise left in store and a curveball to the Drivers' Championship and to the Constructors' Championship. And those are the new track changes that have been made to the Yas Marina Circuit ahead of this weekend's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So, as you may know, Abu Dhabi was never one of the most exciting races ever, and as a season finale it was quite an underwhelming track because it's really tricky to overtake, and when you go to the final race of the season with a title fight such as the one we have, you really want a track where drivers can race. So the organizers at the Yas Marina Circuit actually made some big track changes ahead of this weekend's Grand Prix. Now, the goal of these changes were actually to improve the race flow and make it easier for cars to follow each other and therefore improve racing and improve overtaking. But now let's actually take a look at the changes one by one and find out what effects they will have in this weekend's critical title deciding Grand Prix. Okay, so on your screen right now you can actually see a document that I've prepared with the new and old layouts for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So on your left here you can see the 2020 layout, so here on your left you see the 2020 layout, and here on your right you see the 2021 layouts for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Now there are a few changes in the track, so you can see that in general the track looks about the same, but if I circle it here you can begin by seeing some major changes. So you can see that right here in the beginning of the lap, this turn 5, 6, 7 complex has actually been changed to only a turn 5. So going further around the lap, you can see that going through turns 8 and 9 of the old track, so these ones right here, it's about the same, so it's now turns 6 and 7. But once we go down the straight with the DRS and reach this complex here of 11, 12, 13 and 14, you can see that those corners have been changed also in order to become only turn 9. So turn 9 went from being 3 or 4 corners to being 3 or 4 slow corners in order to be just one medium speed corner. And some other effects that you can see right here, but for these ones I will have to zoom in, is that you can see that from turn about 17 to turn 20, you can see that these corners in the old layout are actually very sharp, but in the new layout they are much smoother. But now let's actually take a look at the changes one by one in order to get a better picture of what they are and their effects on racing. Okay, so now taking a look at what was the old turns 5, 6 and 7 and now is only the new turn 5. So you can see that in the previous track layout, the drivers would actually go out of sector 1 and they would have to make this chicane, which was actually a very bad chicane in my opinion. And then they would have to brake here, then they would make the chicane, and then they would have to brake again into turn 7. And this, honestly, you know how Formula 1 cars work, the modern generation of Formula 1 cars. They hate these 90-degree turns. So now to fix this, what they have done is that they completely made the turns go straight and they actually made the track go a little bit backwards. So if you think about it, turn 7 used to be right about here where the number 5 is. So the drivers would go and make the chicane and then they would go here, and the straight was going to be a little bit longer as an effect. But for safety reasons, since there's a grandstand right around here, they wanted to make the turn faster, so they needed to cut a little bit of the track in order to assure safety for the grandstands and for the drivers, because the speeds going into this corner are going to be much higher than they were on the old turn 7 because of the chicane previously. But now this is going to eliminate one of my major complaints with the whole Abu Dhabi circuit, which was this 5-6 chicane, because this chicane really killed racing because it made drivers having to stop before two 90-degree corners. And you know that with these cars and their sensitive aerodynamics, they really hate 90-degree corners, because in order for you to make a 90-degree corner well, you need all of the aero load that you can get on the car. And trying to follow another car through such a part of the track just killed racing and made it so that the cars were actually very, very further apart going into the sector 2 big straight. So coming into this big straight with DRS, cars will now be able to follow much closer together than they did before. And so this is a big change in my opinion. But now looking at what the track really looks like, you can see that before drivers would need to go from the straight right here, then they would make this 90-degree, then another 90-degree, and then they would make this medium speed corner. Whereas now they will go just straight ahead and have this big wide corner that will have multiple lines available, and they will be able to follow much closer coming into this second straight. So I think that this is going to be a very positive change for racing, and I think that we are going to see drivers much close, not necessarily in this braking zone, but going into this DRS straight. I think that they will be much closer than before, and this will improve racing a lot. Okay, so now let's actually take a look at the next change that they made in the track, which is actually very similar to the previous one. So this used to be turns 11 to 14. So this complex right here that you see on the screen right now used to be turns 11 to 14. So what used to happen was that cars went right here to turn 11, then they have a heavy braking zone, heavy braking zone, heavy braking zone, a small straight, heavy braking zone, and then another straight. So you can see right here the problem that I told you before, which is a lot of these 90-degree corners, which cars hate. And this section of the track is actually quite narrow, so it was very tricky for cars to follow. So one of the good things about the way that the track used to be was this braking zone right here. So we had a very long straight with DRS coming into turn 11, and then it forced the cars to stop. And since there's a chicane after that slow stop, there was actually an opportunity for the driver that was on the back to fight back and to regain the position due to the chicane. But I just think that one of the mistakes that they made in the previous track layout was actually this corner right here, because having a chicane is very good in order for drivers to be able to do switchback moves, but having another corner right after the chicane kind of killed the flow and made it so that the driver that made the overtake in the straight actually had the advantage coming out of this section, whilst if it was a normal chicane, I think that it would be pretty easy for the driver that was ahead to defend and also for the driver that was behind to attack, so it would be more balanced than the way it was before. But now looking at the changes that they made, they actually got rid of this entire section. So turns 11, 12, and 13 and 14 actually got turned into only turn 9. So turn 9 is actually totally different from what we had the year before. So we got rid of all those slow speed corners and we got rid of that chicane, and we instead replaced it with a very wide, very high speed corner where drivers can expect to hit 250 kilometers per hour in their qualifying runs. So a very, very high speed corner, which is slightly banked. You cannot see it in the picture right here from this picture, but it's very slightly banked. So not as much as Zandvoort, obviously, but it's very slightly banked. So it can promote multiple lines going into another DRS straight after this. But this is a change that I'm not sure it's good, because you know that coming from a straight into a heavy braking zone, just like we had before, actually promotes more overtaking than coming into a straight and then having a high speed corner, because usually overtakes are actually promoted by speed differentials. And if the cars don't have to brake as much or only have to trail brake, I think that overtaking in this particular part of the circuit will actually be reduced. But it can promote multiple lines going into this very fast 10 and 11 section. So I think that it can have a good effect on overtaking, but it will definitely decrease the overtaking in this section right here, which was one of the major overtaking points because of the DRS straight that comes immediately before it. And then the final changes made to the circuit were actually very small, and they were in this turn 17, 18, and 19, and which are now turn 12, 13, and 14. And I don't have current pictures of these corners because it's very hard to tell you via pictures what's happened here. But you can see that practically what happened was that these turns, which were actually very awkward turns and off-camber turns, were actually smoothed out, and now there will be faster corners, but they will be much smoother corners, and they will have a slight camber to them. So if you don't know what camber is, it's just like a slight inclination of the track, just I have right here, in order to make it easier for the cars to carry more speed through the corners. And I think that the fact that the corners are now cambered, plus the fact that they are a bit smoother, will improve racing. So don't expect to see overtaking right here, but expect cars to be able to follow much closer than before and than they were before. and expect them to take this turn 14, which was turn 19 in the past, flat out, as opposed to having a braking zone there as we did in the past. Okay, but actually summing things up, which are the consequences that we can expect from all of these track changes? So first things first, we see that we have less low speed corners and more medium speed corners. So this will probably be better for overtaking because the medium speed corners, where they are placed, actually seem to give the track a much better flow than those low speed corners, than those awkward off-cambered low speed corners did in the past. But I think another side effect of these changes will actually be that Mercedes will actually be benefiting from this track. So you know that the Red Bull car actually prefers those low speed corners and is the place where the Red Bull was most dominant last year, and it's the place where the Red Bull car has been better this year, as opposed to the Mercedes with their higher wheelbase and low rake concept, which seems to be much better through the medium to high speed corners than the Red Bull. So one unexpected consequence of these changes is that a track that was quite comfortably a Red Bull track last year actually might favor Mercedes this year. So another change that we can expect to see in the track will be that the cars will be about 10 seconds per lap faster this year than they were last year. So even though the cars are slower, the track will be much faster due to the cutting of those low speed corners. And another consequence of this will be that the tire wear will be much higher. So due to the fact that the corners will now be much faster and that the cars will spend a lot more time on throttle and that those high-speed corners put a lot more energy to the tires, I think that we can expect to see a two-stop race instead of a one-stop race this year in Abu Dhabi, because even though the corners are much faster and the tire wear will be much higher, the compounds that Pirelli will bring are actually the same than last year. So expect a two-stop race and expect a much more interesting strategy race than we are used to having at Abu Dhabi. And just a final conclusion, it's the last race of this 2017, which actually means 2014 to 2021 spec of cars. So this is a generation of cars that I've grown to love, and even though overtaking has not been the best, and even though the same team has been dominant throughout all of these seasons, I really have been grown to love these kinds of cars and the ways that engineers have been able to get the most out of this set of regulations, and the outstanding tricks that have been able to do with aerodynamics and with the engine in this set of regulations has been amazing. So even though I'm very much ready for the 22 spec cars, I will miss these cars, and I actually love this generation. And from 2017 to 2021, I will have to say that this one right here is my favorite. So this is the 2018 Ferrari, so the first Ferrari with the halo, and the car that almost took Sebastian Vettel to the title. And I actually love this car, love the livery, love the car, the design, everything. So this is my favorite car from this set of regulations. And even though unfortunately it was not able to produce a world championship, I very much enjoyed that season. So this has been it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, why not watch my latest video right here? And if you're enjoying the kinds of videos that I'm making, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel more than you can imagine. So this has been it for this video. It's been an outstanding season, and I loved starting this channel with you all for this season. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.